All right, Noel, you can come on in. Yeah, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. You want to take a second and introduce yourself to everybody?
I'm Noel Mercado. I'm a artist here based in Chicago, and yeah, it's multimedia, I guess, found objects, furniture.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, first of all, for joining us today, Noel. We're super excited to have you. I think we were introduced through kind of a mutual connection, and personally, I am a huge fan of a lot of your work. Everything I've seen so far is just like super incredible. So
Thank
I'm
you,
stoked to have
appreciate
you
it.
here. I'll start you off with the same question that we start off pretty much every guest with. It's a tough one, it's a doozy. But if you could use 3 words to describe yourself, what 3 words would you pick?
I would say 3 words to describe myself: eclectic, particular, ambitious.
Ambitious, gotcha.
Yes.
And one thing I've been thinking about this question a lot since the last time we shot a Muse, and one thing I'm always curious about that I guess I've never really asked before is, does that answer change from your like artist's side of things to your personal side of things, or do you find that they're kind of a mix of both?
It's the same.
Yeah.
I would say I approach everything. I approach my work the same way I approach life, and vice versa.
Have you always done that, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've always had some sort of creative itch ever since I was a kid, and then after, like during college, that's when I really discovered what I was good at and how to approach cutthroat industries, because I came from advertising.
Okay.
So even during that time, it was pretty cutthroat industry, like getting in any sort of advertising game. And then I discovered that the art world is the same story, maybe even harder.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of people in the room can be a good
Yeah.
example of that for sure. But that's I wanted to ask you too, like I'm interested, and I think a lot of the folks watching are going to be interested too. How did you really get your feet in design the way you're in it now, right? Like you talk a lot about being artistic at a young age and obviously following that throughout, the rest of your life and how you approach things. But is there, a certain kind of art or a certain medium early on that attracted you to just kind of living the artistic life?
Yeah, so I studied for advertising art direction, and that was partnered with having to be really good at graphic design. And that's where a lot of my being very particular and OCD about lining things up and being as perfect as possible comes from. And after that, in college, I worked at the wood shop at Columbia here in Chicago. And once I really got my hands dirty in making things from scratch, that's when I was hooked on just anything that was wood or leather or scrap materials that I would find. And then after I graduated, I no longer had a wood shop. But I was still wanting to pursue something or have something that I could do that wasn't on the computer. And then I moved into leatherworking, and I started doing that like every single day. I was doing that after work. And then from leather, transitioned kind of into the textile sewing part of it, because it all comes from furniture. So you learn how to make a base of a chair, and then you need the chair to be upholstered, and then you need it to be sewn, like whatever the material you would need, and learning how things were built in shops and stuff like that. You start to look at the world completely different, and you become the person that says, "Oh, I can make that," and then you just one thing leads to another, and then you just can't stop figuring out how to get things done on your own, and it's cheaper to do it that way. So that's kind of where it all stemmed from, and then I just started taking this furniture practice and making it more art focused, and using the ideas that I would have, and not just looking at things as wood or leather, but also making them kind of weird and creating things that highlights blemishes, and that I found this in a scrap bin at the wood shop, or I've got a box of scrap leather from Horween that's in Chicago as well, all the way into just like, oh, okay, now I know what materials mean, and I know like what value they have and what is strong versus weak, and a lot of the things that are made in advertising, signs and like outdoor signage and stuff like that are usually made out of pretty decent materials, and that's kind of where I was like, oh, this Citgo, this metal sign is really interesting, and it's steel and it's heavy duty. It can support weight as opposed to just being on display.
Yeah, sure.
So that's where I was like, oh, like this is perfectly good material that I don't have to essentially buy. I did buy it, but it's just a different approach to how I'm sourcing, as opposed to just going to Home Depot and buying stuff right off the shelf.
For sure.
Everything I use has more of a backstory to it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think it's something that I had noticed immediately when I was exposed to your work. It's just like the extremely wide breadth of variety of materials you use and even pieces that you create. Something that I have been, curious about since I was exposed to your work is the beginning of that process, right? I think you touched on it, right? In the wood shop, and as you're starting to get your feet, as finding your kind of groove as an artist, at least in the more holistic sense of things, right? Was that something that you immediately gravitated towards, or was that did it take some time to get into this idea of like repurposing signs or other things that were created for obviously completely separate use cases?
I would say it was pretty immediate. The way being in the wood shop, there was a big, like several boxes, wooden boxes of just scrap material, and I was surrounded by a lot of talented furniture makers that were in a different class as me in terms of just like talent, and then also older than me in school, and they were either on their way out, and I'm still pretty green to being in the wood shop. So they're using, like, their scrap material was very valuable to me because they're using expensive hardwoods and stuff like this. And I would go into the scrap bin because when I was in college I didn't have any money. So I was like, oh, what can I make out of these shapes that are already here? And then being like, oh, I really enjoyed using this oak wood. Let me see how I want to buy some. And then I would see the price tag, and having no money, I was like, oh, never mind. I'm just going to continue to like collage what I find in the scrap. So then after that, I was like, okay, the stuff is available and it's going to be thrown away essentially, or like it is going to be thrown away if no one uses it. So I would just get as creative as I could on how to use every single piece of whatever I found down to its very bare, like almost until it was nothing. Sure. So I just took that idea and that was my practice moving forward. That's the only thing I did. So I took it from just being wood all the way to what the fabrics I'm using, and liking these imperfect and weird cuts of old tables that were being discarded, and being like, oh, like there's nail holes, and like you can see like the rust from where the nail was after you pull it out. To me, it was more interesting, and it definitely displayed its previous life. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say being saved from the trash, but just like being used to its to the last drop, essentially. Right. And then after you see I remember getting, I don't know, a bunch of pieces of a cut off round table. So I had all these round pieces, like these like crescent pieces, and I would use it to make frames, and the frames would just get as small as that rounded piece was. So yeah. I would have a collection of frames that would all trickle down in the same like nesting almost. They would all get a little bit smaller, and then until I had no more wood left. Sure. And it's just like more, and then from that, then I'm like, oh, cool, like I can get, I don't know, 20 inches out of this piece of wood. Now what can I put inside of it? So then inside of these frames. So then it just becomes more of like this customization and making things fit because of the lack of material and also the shape of it, and working within a framework, working within this box of what the material's letting me do versus just buying stuff off the shelf and making something that can be kind of boring because you have unlimited amounts of whatever it is you need.
Right. And you think that I mean, I think that this at least in some part, what you're getting at, because I think I've always really been interested in this idea of like, people always say think outside the box, but I'm always really enamored by artists that kind of do the opposite in a weird way. And what I mean is they kind of put themselves in a creative box and try to work themselves out. And I think that that's something that, you know, I'm picking up from you right now, right? It's like you have to make something out of this piece of wood because you don't have the option of anything else, right? And I think that that's really interesting. And like just like an interesting insight to your process. Do you find that that's something that you're like consciously doing and saying like, okay, I'm going to pick this piece or this, I'm going to grab this from scrap or buy it from a secondhand shop because I know it is going to be difficult. I know it's going to push me as an artist.
No. I usually find out that it's difficult to work with while I'm like taking it apart or am trying to sew through it. I just gravitate towards, I stop myself on limiting, like, oh, I know how this fabric will work, so I'm going to just, I mean, I do that, but also if I just see, if something's interesting and I'm drawn to it, I just buy it or pick it up from a lot of, at this point, a lot of people give me things that are like, oh, I have this forever, like you can just take it, or I'll find it in my alley or something like that. So I will always, that's why a lot of my work has become so versatile, is because I'm like, oh, I'll figure it out, and then I'll figure out how I can use it and how best to use it. So no, that's pretty much my process. Is I just go, let myself be drawn to the things that I find interesting, and then I take it back to the studio. Sometimes it's just for years, where I just don't touch it forever until I have enough of a base collection where I'm like, okay, I don't need to go to the store. I don't need to like buy it. I don't need to source any more things. I have enough, and then I just start piecing everything together. So you like these pieces. It's a collection of scrap fabric, that some that I've had for a few months, some that I've had for 8 to 10 years, and then I'm finally like, okay, cool. Also, being able to part with these materials, because I have so little of it most of the time, I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna use it, I have to make it count, and it has to be good, and I can't fuck up. Like really, I just like can't. And if I do, that sucks, because then I wasted some fabric or a metal or something that I've saved for 5 years.
Right, there's the finite material aspect of it.
Right? I mean, and that's kind of where it starts to, I'm not working on a blank page necessarily. I'm working within what the material's letting me do to it. And that's the fun part and the challenge, but that's also why I usually only make things one time.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm like, I don't want to cut 50 seatbelts again and like string them together. I already did it. I know the challenges. I'm sure I would make another one that would be better, but I already did it. Move on to like I'm intrigued by the next challenge or what could be what the next thing is.
Do you find that that's something that inspires you, like kind of day over day, is finding something new, something you've never worked on before, something that you might have never even seen anybody work on before? Is that, do you think, like the main driving force behind what gets you into stores and getting product and stuff?
Yeah, I think it's, especially when I just come across something, I'm like, oh, it's available, or it's like free or cheap, super cheap, like the seatbelt with Celis chair I did, for example. I think I bought, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 seatbelts that I went in the cars and cut them out and made sure I had piles of seatbelts, and I probably spent like $90, and I made I made that with Celis chair that made it into like Knoll's view, and they liked it, and I don't know, just like there is the thrill of using something that is unconventional and figuring out, it's a puzzle. It's like I'm making my own puzzle as I'm going, and I have to figure out how to collage it together and make it look good, make it function, and then also know when to stop, let the materials breathe and speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just like a huge combination. That's why like these pieces here are kind of a representation of that thought process of just like every square is the exact same, but anything within the square is different, and it's just like those to me are my thoughts in one gridded, because I am a very symmetrical, like everything has to be perfect kind of maker, like artist. So whatever is within the square, if it doesn't matter what's in it, if there's paint, if there's like other stitch marks from whatever it was before, that's where I'm like, oh, cool. It kind of reminds me of my brain works, where I'm thinking about 50 things at one time, but they're all compartmentalized at least a little bit.
Definitely. That's awesome. Well, you mentioned it when you were talking just now. You mentioned Knoll. I wanted to talk about a few of the collaborations because obviously you've worked with some of the larger, more reputable brands in the furniture design space, in just, in some cases, just the design space. Looking at your resume, Knoll, Rimowa, those are the two that stand out to me. USM, definitely, recently, particularly. How do you think, having worked with those brands and then being the kind of artist that you are, that is definitely, maybe the opposite side of the spectrum in terms of like reusing that kind of stuff. How has that experience shaped your process? Has it changed it? Or has it been just kind of something that's solidified the way that you do your style thing?
Working with those brands, it was fun. I mean, there's always some input that they have, and that's kind of just like the name of the game when you're working with these companies. And it's okay because I'm very collaborative and I like to learn and know what it is that they brought me on for a reason, but I'm also trying to learn from them at the same time. So I'm not resistant towards them saying, oh, can you like change this a little bit, or like we don't want to show our fabrics or our chairs, whatever, in that form necessarily, but we don't want to stop you from making what you want to make. And then I'll go, well, that's fine. Like I have a bag full of tricks that I can figure something else out. Like here's a bunch of options. Which ones are you drawn to the most? And it's kind of like a catalog that I provide, or they'll approach me and say, hey, like we really like these few pieces. Can you do something like that for us? I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Like I made those, so I can make that for you. I think I mostly from these collaborations with the big and the small ones, it's I don't want to say small, just like not as well known or whatever. Learning their internal process is very beneficial to me because I take Rimowa was like my real first one, and they were very big, and they've since then have got I think since 2020 or 2021 have became like massive, and just like taking all of these little bits of learning experiences from brand to brand and being able to be like, oh, okay, like I kind of remember what that experience was like, or I do remember what that first experience was like. How can I take that information and apply it to my next one? And then just like collecting all of this. I mean, my thoughts are the same as like my materials. Like I just collect, and then I figure out when to use which part of it at the right scenario. So that's probably the biggest thing I think with these brands that I've learned is just, I mean, I come from a corporate background, so when I graduated, I went straight into design professionally. So I have, I know how to navigate these corporate meetings and how to be a part of it and what timelines look like and what's realistic and all of these things. So that's also very helpful, knowing that if I'm starting on a project with whatever brand, that it's not going to come out, or I might not even hear back from them for 6 months to 8 months, and then we'll get started, and then it'll be a year until that thing comes out, depending on their timeline, because they're always on the next quarter. So you have to always consider those things and not get your feelings hurt. But if you can, it's just it's a time management thing, and just like I'm a very impatient person, but this is like the one part of my practice where I'm just like, I just have to be patient because they're on a whole different, I'm one little piece to whatever it is they're doing for their year. And yeah, also I get exposure to, I've been lucky enough to be able to visit some of these factories and visit a lot of these HQs and just seeing what's laying around their offices. And I was like, oh, and then coming in with new eyes, I'm like, hey, can I use that? Like, is that, oh yeah, that's been sitting there forever. Like, go for it. Like, do you need more? And I was like, yeah, like send me whatever you have. So seeing that internal, like how these brands work internally, like through the business side, and then also seeing how their manufacturing process works, because that's also super interesting to me. I'm looking at these machines that are doing what I do at my studio by hand, and I'm figuring out how I can operate like these machines. So I'm like watching these these die cuts for leather. I'm like, okay, how can I emulate that? Or like when I did USM, I saw the production facility, and I was like, holy crap, these are robots. But how can I learn from these robots? Like, what is their system, and how is it, like, their efficiencies and stuff like that? So I'm always taking something away, because I have been in some spaces that people like have never seen before. So
Sure.
I don't take it lightly. I take it very serious, but also while having fun with it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, that's awesome, and kind of refreshing to hear artists talk about learning from things that are, like even robots. Like, that's such a like kind of a take that you don't hear very often.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's
I'm like, I look at them as my competition.
Yeah.
Robots. I
I
look
guess
at robots and machinery as my competition, and it'll never be the same, but that's the fun of it, right? Is
For
like
sure.
is trying to be as good as these machines, having the precision, but then also being able to see that there was it done by hand.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's awesome. I mean, one thing that we always like to hear about is how different artists learn from different kind of sources, robots in this case. One that kind of made me curious. This is obviously a very like Chicago-based series. We like to highlight Chicago-based artists and whatnot. So, do you have any? And this is kind of related to that, but do you have any like mentors, maybe locally or anything that you've taken a lot of inspiration from, or that you've learned a lot from, maybe the same way that now you're dissecting robots a little bit more?
Well, I'm definitely not a robots kind of guy, but I'm like, I wonder how, like, that's very interesting how they made that template, like that type of thing. I wouldn't say I have any mentors. I mean, I have some people who I look up to in the city, who have been around, and that they are very talented at what they do. And then also, like, I'm always looking at my friends who are either small business owners or creatives in the scene, who I'm just like, oh, like, I hope we can learn from each other. I want it to be definitely a good way of give and take, because we're all learning this stuff when it comes down to how do you get an LLC, like who does your taxes, and because I became full-time artist just probably a year and a half ago or something like that. But having already operating the same way I'm doing now, I had my studio. I was already in full production mode. I tell people I had 2 full-time jobs, one and the other one was art.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely lean on like my creative friends to guide me, and hopefully I can give them insight on how we can be all successful in the city, and become like the go-to people in Chicago. And I think I've become a part of that community, which is like really nice to like look around, like, oh, like my friend owns that place, my other friend owns that place, my other friend just like is in a magazine right now, and it's like all from Chicago, and it makes you very proud to call those people your friends, and then also just like to be a part of that, like to be that friend to them as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, we were just talking about it off camera. We've got friends all around where we are right
Yeah,
now, right?
yeah.
Like that's super cool, and definitely that community aspect is something that we've all experienced that makes Chicago so great. Is that you do have this kind of all tides rising kind of element of it. And one thing I always like to ask folks too is like, in what way does Chicago inspire you, even outside of its people, as a city, as a workspace, for lack of a better term, for an artist? Like the canvas of Chicago, do you find that you're drawing inspiration from things that maybe other folks are kind of just walking by on a day-to-day that if you were in a different city you might not have? Do you have any like touchstones for that kind of stuff?
I think one that I've over the years have realized is kind of like the edge of being in Chicago is the suburbs, because I source a lot of my stuff like from just Facebook or thrift stores or whatever. And not everyone has this access to this Midwest town, like this, us coming from like industrial factories where things were made, or where you find old furniture or old sewing machines and it says like manufactured in Chicago. And not every place has that, and people want a lot of the stuff that was manufactured here. Or even just in the Midwest, from Michigan or Wisconsin, that plays so I try not to take that for granted because I will travel and I try to do the same thing in the different cities I'm in. I'm like, oh, let me go to like what's up with this thrift store? Like, let me look at Facebook while I'm in, I don't know, New York or something, and it's just different, and and it's not looked at. I think we look at it with a lot more modesty here when I go and pick up a vintage sewing machine, and I hear a backstory about this was my grandmother's or this was my mom's, and they came from the time of like you fix your own things with this machine, and I think that's what continues to draw me back to the fabrics and like even the tools I use, is that they all have some sort of spirit still in them, and I think that's very important. I mean, and then the city is just has all the benefits of just in comparison to LA or New York, it's more affordable. I know it's kind of like a cop-out answer, but I don't know. It's just different. I don't know. There's a lot here, and there was a point where I was considering moving to New York because I'm there all the time, and but I thought it was important to go to New York and even like the West Coast and get the people who I've become acquainted with on the internet and Instagram and stuff, and bring that stuff to Chicago and be like, oh, who else is in Chicago? Like, do you know anybody else? And then then I can put on my friends, or they can help me out, or they can point me in the right direction of people who they're making connections with outside of the city. So I think just like bringing these opportunities to Chicago and then being Chicago-based is super important to just show other younger creatives that you don't necessarily have to leave, unless it depends on what field you're in. But it really just depends on what your approach is. And my approach was to just stay and then figure it out. And if I can't live in New York, I got to be there 3 times like a year at least, or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a combination of dabbling in a lot of different things, and pulling inspiration probably mostly from the people who are around me here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's also awesome to hear just like that idea when you talk about the stories you hear when you pick up pieces, like your example being a sewing machine and all that. And like you mentioned it earlier, that like second life idea about how almost all of your pieces have that inherently because they're sourced. They're not necessarily bought in a traditional sense, right? Mm-hmm. Does that ever inform, kind of going back to maybe your process a little bit on this one, but does that ever inform your plans going forward in the sense of maybe you set out to buy something from somebody because you're like, oh, this is going to be this part of the piece, and then you hear the story. Does that ever change your plans about what you're picking up? Is that kind of something that you try not to let influence you too much?
I don't think it influences me, but it's something that I keep in mind. Like the sewing machine I use all the time, that's like my go-to machine. I bought it from this, he's a younger guy, and his grandfather was a suit maker in their house. Like his shop was in their house, like in like this little patio area, or like, yeah, something like that, enclosed area. But he was telling me the stories about how he would like sweep up to help his grandpa. Like he was like, I grew up with these machines, and my grandpa would be so, I mean, this is just one of this many stories like this, but he's just like, he'd be so happy to know that someone is using this like for the purpose of like fixing, repairing, and like making things. And so while I'm using I'm always thinking about that, where I'm like using this machine or using like a scissors or something, and I'm like, oh, whoever like owned this would be so happy to know that they're still being used, because that's how I would feel one day when I'm no longer here, and if I know some young kid is using the stuff I used, and I would be like, oh, sick, like they're still working, like they're still in use. So it's like trying to make someone proud who I'd never even met before, and like keeping that spirit alive, and that's what is touching. And then also it's just like it's fun to think about, and then it's like, oh, cool, like I know that I'm doing something good if whoever owned this before would be happy that I'm doing this.
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. I could hear you talk about that for hours.
Yeah, I have a lot of those stories of just like people. I've been asked how if I took every sewing machine that was offered to me, I'd have probably like 50 sewing machines.
Storage locker story.
Yeah. It's hard to say no.
Yeah, I know. I don't blame you. We are pushing up against time, so I just have a few more questions for you. I'll do kind of like rapid fire kind of style thing here. No pressure, just the first thing that comes off your mind. But this one might be a little bit longer. But if somebody came to you and said, "Noel, my apartment is horrible. I need to buy one piece of furniture to like, just zhuzh it up a little bit, get some energy in the room," where do you think your mind would go right now?
A coffee table.
Yeah.
A coffee table. You can tie a room together with anything with a nice coffee table. Because you can get a couch that looks nice, and then maybe it's actually very shitty, but as long as it looks nice, then you get a dope coffee table that's made out of good materials. It's kind of how I like really started taking appreciation into when I started living alone. Like I was like, oh, like I need like a really dope coffee table, because then it will make everything around. I could put my cool stuff on top of the coffee table, and then like books, and then that leads to one thing next into the next. But yes, I think investing in a nice coffee table is very worth it.
Gotcha. That's where the money goes. Got it. All right. So, quick with this one. Artist that is currently inspiring you the most?
My buddy Tyrell Winston, he's in Detroit. He was in New York for a long time, but I ask him questions all the time. We use very similar materials. Like we just like finding stuff in the trash, really, or just like that is being thrown away, and then people give it to us. But I really like enjoy listening to his process and how he goes about his work professionally. He's just one. My friend Ben Edgar, he's another one. He's Chicago-based. He's really great. And my buddy Cody Hudson, he's also another big source of inspiration for me. Just like how these guys operate, and I'm like, okay, I take a little bit of information from all, not just them, but several people, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I like that part. Like how can I like fuse that into what I'm doing, and like it's clearly working for them, so like I'm gonna make it work for me too. And it's just like these little bits of information that these guys like are always like super willing to give me, and give me advice and kind of point me in the right direction, or how to approach my own practice to be successful as a full-time artist is very beneficial. And so their work is great, but then also like their practice is like almost even better sometimes.
Yeah. Awesome. So if you had to pick one piece that you finished this year to put on the mantelpiece, to put in the resume, what's your favorite one from this year?
I just finished one the other day that I haven't like posted or even taken proper photos of, but it's of a Mack truck bulldog hood ornament on top of a box that's made out of a desk that I found. It's like this big. And then dice, like vintage dice that I was gifted. Like I was gifted a box of vintage dice, and I was like, this is exactly the stuff I like. It's exactly like the things I collect. And I finally made this piece that I've had in my head for like 3 years. It's so simple, but I had to be so perfect.
Yeah.
And it can actually fit on a mantle. So,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so that's probably why. And then these, I've been really enjoying making these, because this is it's been great to finally use all the scrap pieces that I have, and then like bless them and do away with the whatever is remainder, because I'm very attached to my fabrics. Mm-hmm. So this practice has really made me go, okay, once this is made, then that's it for the fabric, because I'm surrounded by scrap, and I can't keep collecting it. So it's been really nice it's like a closure with the fabric that I have, and then just being like, okay, it's finally cool to let go of this, and then also have it be in use.
Some fabric-based catharsis.
Yes, yeah.
All right, last question, and then I promise cut you loose. We won't hold you hostage anymore. What's one thing that you are excited for going into next year?
Just all the stuff that I've been planning this year. All the stuff that I've been working on this year. Again, going back to just like it takes time, like working with the bigger brands, and then just like gallery shows and stuff like that take a little minute to, you're a part of the schedule, so you have to wait for everything else to pass. And then once you're called up. So I'm excited for some gallery shows, some collaborations that are coming out, and then some collaborations that with some friends locally. So yeah, you're gonna soon after this is released. That's probably around when a lot of this stuff will be coming out. So I'm excited for everyone to see the stuff that I've been somewhat silently working on, plus my artist residency with the Edith Farnsworth House that I've been promoting have been promoting a lot. Really excited to make the work and then show the work.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much, Noel, for coming today. Again, I'm just like super excited to have you in the studio.
Me too. Yeah,
talk
thank you.
Just for this limited amount of time. But I want to give you a few seconds. Let them know, Instagram, website, whatever you want, wherever you want folks to check you out. Let them know, because we're always happy to help.
Noel Wallet Chain, Instagram. I'm on TikTok somewhere. And just Noel Mercado, noel-mercado.com. I'm open to commissions. I like working with people, like existing materials that people bring to me. Like, hey, like I have this old jacket. Like, what can we do with it? I'm like, oh, let's bring it in. Let's make something cool. So you can have a little piece of whatever idea that you're willing to let me do on it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, man. We're excited and just thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a great time.
It's fun.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Cool. Good.